So this is the new year starting, and we got this post from Elon yesterday or late last night. He said the brutal reality of the situation will hit like a tsunami towards the end of next year. He's replying to this post by Techie Danny, who was saying that how can you call yourself a tech influencer and not recognize how advanced Tesla software is? She's talking about Tesla software, how advanced it is, and Elon says the brutal reality of this situation will hit like a tsunami towards the end of next year. There's so many ways to take that. Let's start with you, Jeff. How did you react to that statement?
Hey, happy New Year's Eve to everyone. It's been quite the year, and it's been great spending time chatting with everyone. I took this statement as, I think Elon's actually been pretty consistent about what they're seeing. And remember, they're, a couple versions ahead of what we're seeing in FSD. And, in my experience, I draw on my own experience with FSD. I listen to what the company says. And I went from using it 30% of the time a year ago on version 11 to about 50, 70% of the time on version 12, definitely more after version 12.5. And now I'm using it. I can't imagine getting in the car and not using FSD. It's the exception now. And so I view that progression of percent of time usage, which I know is something they're probably tracking in terms of total available time and usage, because that's a real quality indicator of the product. And Tesla has so much more information, but yeah, they're long story short, they're seeing a couple of versions ahead. These models take a while to train, but I'm sure they're testing something now that's unbelievable, even beyond what we're seeing in 13.2. And they're now able to apply scaling laws of what they've seen through the 12 series this year in the 13, and it looks like they're feeling confident. So we'll see how it goes. There's a lot of milestones ahead of us, but I just think they're able to take the relative improvement of what they're seeing, the fleet data, that what they're seeing, the internal testing that what they're able to do, and they're able to project forward. And the economics of it are real. And that's where we spend. And I try to make this point a couple times this week. We spend very little time, including Wall Street analysts, spend very little time talking about the business model around FSD and robotaxi relative to the business model that other companies are trying to take on or execute. And many of these companies actually fail at the business model level, but they still have a product technically out there operating. It's almost kind of in zombie mode, in my opinion. But I'll throw it back. But I think he's got tremendous confidence in what they're building.
Oh, I thought you were going to feel better today. Hopefully, you'll start feeling better soon, Jeff.
Yep.
But I keep telling you, your voice is very good. The lower it is, the better it sounds. Sorry about that.
I'm glad you're amused.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so he's talking about how advanced Tesla software is, and he uses pretty bold words here. Brutal reality of the situation, like a tsunami towards the end of next year. Omar, how did you take that sentence?
Yeah, I mean, I think people who are starting to use the software can see what he's talking about. I think there's a pretty decent chance that a year from today, Tesla started giving at least a few unsupervised rides. I mean, we're seeing what FSD 13 can do. It's usually, for many people, able to do complete drives on its own now. And it's not even surprising when it does. It's just normal. So that started rolling out a month ago. Okay. So in the last month, they've been polishing up 13.3, 13.4. This includes 3x model size scaling, 3x context length scaling. Basically as good as V13 is, and it's now on, all the cars, new cars, AI4 cars. We're going to have a record quarter this quarter, and everybody who takes delivery in the United States is going to be picking up a car with FSD 13 for the end of the quarter here. And they're going to pick up that car and drive it home. And, we've seen a lot of different FSD updates over the years. 12, I think, was really exciting because we saw this new paradigm of end to end, but it was still making many mistakes. In some cases, even more mistakes than 11. But we could see that this new paradigm was really promising. With 13, it's amazing just talking to my non-techie Tesla owner friends, aunts and uncles, friends, people who were not normally even subscribing to FSD or using it all the time. And they just call me gushing. They go, "Oh my God, this thing is so good now. I can't believe it. What happened? It's just doing all my drives. I'm using it all the time." So this is something I've been watching for a long time when it kind of crosses that chasm into a mainstream product. And there's no doubt that's happening now. And it's happening across the country. So the legacy auto industry is already pretty weak. They're struggling just to figure out how to sell cars as rates remain persistently high. They're looking at consolidating, merging with each other, getting into bed with each other to try and keep the lights on, save money, whether it's Rivian and Volkswagen or Honda and Nissan. And here, this disruption is coming that is really a tsunami that's about to hit the industry. And that's Tesla FSD. And almost nobody seems to have really, I think, internalized what's really happening. They're so used to just kind of watching this and seeing a lot of progress, but still supervised driving. And people have kind of brushed it off. They say, okay, yeah, great. Everyone likes V13. That's nice. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get to unsupervised driving. And I think what's really going to become clear to people over the next year is that Tesla's really standing on their own here. They're not one of many systems trying to catch up, as many people, even many Tesla fans, seem to believe. They've actually got a system that can do more with less, that has a cost structure that can actually be profitable, a fraction of the sensors, hundreds of times the volume in terms of the number of cars in the fleet, and yet it's actually able to drive better with less. That, I think, is going to be the really surprising thing for people, and the gap is only getting bigger as we go down the V13 series. So it's kind of like Siri and ChatGPT voice. If you've talked to ChatGPT voice, it's amazing, right? And it can answer questions and converse with you about pretty much anything. And then there's Siri, which is incredibly dumb and can't even handle pretty simple requests. So for a naive person, they might say, well, Siri, ChatGPT voice, what's the difference? Waymo is kind of starting to look like Siri. Its driving is jerky, it's uncomfortable, it's robotic. Even ordinary passengers are noticing this and telling me, you know what, I think Tesla FSD is actually starting to perform better. So I think this is really what he's talking about. This is really, even as I think a supervised software package, posing an extreme disruption to the auto industry. Frankly, at this point, given what's available on the market, if you're buying a car that is not going to be autonomy capable, you're probably making a bad investment. You don't really want to be holding that asset, I think, in the coming years. I would recommend, if you do need to get a manually driven car, you should probably be leasing it at this point.
Now, so both of you guys referred to FSD as the most important thing by the end of next year. But when I read what he's saying here, and he's talking about advanced Tesla software, and it's like a tsunami, right? For me, it's beyond that, right? So we would expect AI 5 might be coming by the second half of 2025. So that will not only be the FSD, but also the bots. We might actually see Dojo coming out soon and some sort of more advancement in the compute, like significant growth in the compute that they have today. There's a lot of things that could actually come out here, not just FSD, including the bot. Do you guys not read that, or do you guys just both focus just on FSD?
Yeah, well, what I see happening is Tesla's real world AI is going to be the first AI that actually takes and replaces or augments human labor. And I think it's going to start with the driver in the car, and that's a pretty meaningful thing and potential impact, not potential, but real impact to society. So I think it's going to be meaningful. I think it's going to solve a lot of problems. If I were to project in the future, the cost to transport goods, you're going to get the cost per mile to the point where you're going to take things that were conventionally done by FedEx, UPS. You're going to, like, that last couple of miles. These things could all. There's a bigger piece to robotaxi to me than just transporting people. I think it's going to fundamentally shift how goods go from point A to point B, and then the cost per mile piece of it. You're going to see a huge shift of the rides going from human driven rides to what Tesla is doing. So I think it's the first AI. You hear the word AI out there, and you can use Llama or Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT, but I don't know if those are really taking people out of an operation. I think it's helping people be more productive. And quite frankly, the error rate is still pretty large. Like, you're still getting a lot of wrong answers, whereas with FSD and robotaxi, you can't get a lot of wrong answers. It has to be really good. So anyway, I just think it's more meaningful in terms of the impact of people. Is this is going to be the first AI that actually starts pulling people out of a job and starts redistributing where people work. Now, that won't all happen overnight, but the realization may be pretty rapid when people see this.
Can either of you, Omar, can you speak to what AI 5 is going to unleash? It's supposed to be, I think, 10 times the capability of AI 4. It's going to be much more energy efficient, of course. It's going to be used for both the bots, not just the cars. It's going to be the thing, right? Hardware acceleration. What do you know about AI 5? Like, what is that going to be able to do to the data and the compute?
Well, AI 5 will probably start shipping at the end of 2025 or in 2026, and that's supposed to be about 10 times more powerful on the compute side compared to AI 4. So as you look at them really turning to model scaling as a way to drive improvements, AI 4 is supposed to be able to handle a model that's about 8 times larger. We haven't seen them scale up yet. The 3x model scaling will be the first step there, and then they'll be able to do, I think, another 2 to 3x again on AI 4. But then you've got AI 4, you've got, the more powerful computer, any sort of updates to the sensors, maybe making them more weatherproof, more ready for unsupervised. You're going to see that happening with AI 5. So not only does it allow the software to scale up, have a much bigger model running in the car if you need to, have redundant models running, that type of thing. You're also, basically any objections people have, if you don't believe that the hardware is ready for unsupervised, well, they're about to come out, a year from now, they're going to start shipping their next hardware generation. So you just sort of look out at what happened in 2024 and ask yourself, what if this happens in 2025 again? What if they continue to scale up the model, the training cluster? They continue to increase the inference compute on the cars. This same framework they've been using, it doesn't require really any novel engineering breakthroughs. Just taking what they've done and continuing to scale it through the larger training cluster, through the increased inference compute, you're going to continue to see driving performance increase, pretty much guaranteed. And where does that take us when they've already got, in my opinion, the smoothest self-driving system in the world here? I don't know, but I think what's really interesting is a lot of this is not priced in compared to, for example, the energy business, right? They've just got this new Shanghai mega factory, and it's pretty easy to come up with a model and try and figure out what the earnings contribution of that factory is going to be. It could be a little better than expected, but you can look at that and say, okay, well, the energy business is probably going to double in size as this thing ramps. You can look at new product introductions like the new Model Y or more affordable models and say, okay, this will probably add this much volume. Great news, by the way, that Model Y is going to be the best selling car in the world again this year. But I think Wall Street is not fully pricing in the licensing opportunity, given that they probably think there's more of a competitive field for licensing, when the reality is really Tesla is the only system that can do what automakers need the system to do to really put it in their car at a reasonable cost. And I think the ride share line item coming in sooner than expected. I mean, they're still going to have the auto business. They're going to be selling cars, selling more cars even. But now they've got this new line item of rideshare that I think is going to continue to grow. Uber is at $160 billion in gross bookings when you take their run rate from the Q4 numbers. So $160 billion that people are spending on Uber. I think a growth of the rideshare line item, the rideshare business that's faster than expected, hasn't quite been priced in yet. And that's why FSD is sort of interesting near term. I mean, I think longer term, the bot is going to be able to dwarf it in terms of the number of different fields it can automate as opposed to just driving. But they seem to still be playing quite a bit with the design. Um, they're they've got some Optimus production lines in Texas. They're building quite a few, probably more than people realize. They've got dozens of them around. But really, when we see them start finalizing the design of Optimus, selling it to other companies, then you're going to know they're getting closer to actually having something that's productized where the design is nailed down. And now the focus is really on ramping up. In 2025, I think FSD, the rideshare network, and licensing are going to be the biggest surprises in the business that the market isn't fully accounting for yet.
Thank you so much, Omar, for explaining AI 5 a bit more there. Yoda, come join us.
Happy New Year Eve, guys. Yeah, just wanted to chime in on the tsunami. Yeah, I think if you look at Tesla for the long term, the reason why it's a tsunami is that, in my opinion, Tesla has transitioned into an AI company that manufactures semi-sentient robots at scale. Each of those words are quite important. The robots aren't dumb, they're semi-sentient, and it's at scale. And that I think cars and humanoids are only the first two use cases. Now, I'll skip the stuff in between in terms of use cases, but I'll take you to the other end of the spectrum. If you think about warfare, today there are drones which are unmanned, but they're teleoperated, by someone back in home base. we are going to advance to a point where on board the drones, uh, there's going to be an AI model that will be doing the fighting, the decisions itself, right? And so basically, it's just an application of having an AI model that is intelligent on board the device, the form factor. And so from cars to humanoids to modern warfare, there are a ton of form factors in between. And what Tesla has done essentially is figured out a way to kind of generalize that process. If you think about the what NVIDIA is doing, well, they design the chips, they sell the chips, and some vendor turns them into racks that sells it to the hyperscalers, that then they train foundational models, that then it's a very long chain. And what Tesla has done is be able to go from designing the chips to standing up the clusters to then training models that then they put into robots as embodied AI, and they sell that directly to the consumer. Think about how many application, how efficient that is. And so yeah, I totally agree with Elon's kind of post that Tesla is at the very beginning of being able to come up with new applications after cars and humanoids.
What do you guys think about the words he used, though? The brutal reality of the situation. That is very strong. I mean, it's like it's no longer just, yeah, FSD's coming. You guys will be shocked. It's fire. It's gonna be interesting. It's
Well,
like, no, this is it. It's here, and it's gonna be. People who still refuse to believe it. It's a brutal reality. It's coming.
yeah, maybe I'll just quickly start there. So I think it's becoming apparent that as I'm driving on the road, for the last couple decades, there were just the same driver, human drivers. Some are a little bit better, some are more experienced. And what differentiated us are maybe the cars. Some people are driving, much more performant cars. Some are driving economic cars. But what's happening right now is that on the road, I'm starting to realize that there are people that drive manually, and they pose a risk to the road because they're distracted. Um, and then there's another breed of drivers who are driving Teslas with FSD, and they are much more relaxed. They probably stay in the lane and make these kind of, driving decisions, much better than human drivers. And the reason why this isn't totally obvious is that you have to experience it yourself to understand how that technology FSD changes your behavior. And so, true to the name, I'm now monitoring or I'm supervising the car while it's doing its thing. I'm totally behaving differently. And as this advances, essentially the car will be driving itself unsupervised.
Yeah, I think those are all great comments. I think a year from now, we're going to be driven by FSD, and on the whole, it's going to drive better than we do today. It's going to keep in lanes, to center itself in lanes. My vehicles on 13.2 are already doing better lane changes than I would do. Like they're seeing the opportunity earlier because of the, I only have 2 eyes and 7 cameras, and so a year from now, I just think it's going to be, not only are we going to get to the point of, basically it being perfect, but I actually think it's just going to, on the whole, just every time drive better. And I think that's going to be realized by people, and it's going to be meaningful. When he talks about like the brutal reality, I think he's also referring to, it's December 31st, 2024. And I guess there isn't an inked, licensing deal for, Tesla's FSD solution. And I think when he's talking about the brutal reality is you could have started working with Tesla a year ago, and maybe you'd be in production by the end of 25 or early 26 with a car that can drive itself as well at this lower cost structure. And the longer that any of these companies wait to license it, the greater the gap is going to be. And remember, everybody's really focused on like, well, when is unsupervised going to be? And that's part of it. But the other part of it is, when is the business model realized? And the business model is realized very, very quickly with Tesla's robotaxi model, because the cost of capital has already been bared out. Like, they've already spent the $1,200 and put the inference inside of each of the vehicles. They've already spent the money, and it's already been included in the financials. So this hill you have to climb to get a robotaxi network running at scale, others have to spend $50,000-$60,000 times X number of vehicles to get the kind of footprint that Tesla already will have. So when he says brutal reality, I think the brutal reality is going to be, you could have partnered with us. You haven't done it up to this point. So the gap is going to grow. And then the gap also grows in the business model, because the time, for them getting a meaningful number of units onto the road will also grow. And it'll also be, it'll be a function of their cost of manufacturing, which necessarily hasn't come down at the same rate that Tesla has. And so I think that brutal reality is, there's the model I think people should really start the robotaxi conversations in the future and spend more time on the model. Like, how many units, the cost of capital to get those units out there, the time to peak volume and scale. Like, those things are, quite frankly, like, if you believe everybody is going to get there at some point in the future, then the business model really, to me, weighs even heavier, because they have the best business model. No one is even close to this. If there is, someone should sketch it out and maybe share it with others. But anyway,
I like what you both said. The brutal reality is by next year, there's no ifs, ands, or doubts anymore at that point. If you're a car company, you've got to become an autonomous company, and you'll see that the power of the tool that they have now can impact so many things. I like Tesla. Welcome.
Hi guys, happy New Year. I just wanted to tell you a little story that I had today. I went to lunch with a friend, his wife, and 2 daughters, and I had the Cybertruck in the parking lot, and the wife starts to ask me about the Cybertruck, blah blah. And I tell her, "Would you like to take it for a spin?" And she's like, "Oh no, my God, I never drove a Tesla." And I tell her, "Don't worry, you won't need to drive." So we get into the car, and I just explained to her, okay, so this is drive. You press the brake like in a regular car, and this is the steering wheel. Now put an address, and we start FSD. And for the first time in my life, guys, I've given drives on Teslas to everybody I could. 10 seconds or 20 seconds into the drive, she turns around and tells her husband, "We need to get this. Like, we need to buy this." And she's like, "Oh my God!" And it's and everything that it was Boca. We're in Florida, and people don't drive well. There was people. She was so impressed, and she was insisting that she needs to get it. And then she started asking me, "And is it just because this is a Cybertruck?" So I told her, "No, it's you, and you can get it on the Model Y too." Yes, you can get it on the Model Y.
Yeah.
So, guys, it's like Omar was saying. This is really, really gonna catch up very, very fast.
Yeah,
so
you saw the brutal reality open up in her eyes.
Yeah, I never saw somebody react as, "I need to get this car. Like, I need to get this now." Usually when you take a drive with somebody, it's like, "Oh, this is cool, the acceleration and the comfort," but never a desperation to, "I need this right now because I hate to drive, and this thing drives better than me, and I need it now." That was amazing.
Yeah.
All right, Happy New Year, guys.
Yeah. I've been telling the story now that my daughter bought her an old Model 3 in LA, and she started calling me up about a month ago saying, "I need to buy FSD." I was so shocked that she even brought it up. She wants it for helping her with the auto parking. And so then I gave her the referral link, and now she's got lots of referrals, and then now she's using that for FSD. But yeah, just out of the blue, she wasn't somebody I was expecting to demand it. And then I myself have started using FSD 13, and I can no longer drive without it. And typically I would test out FSD for about a week or two, and then that's it. But now it's like it's all my drives too, so it's been amazing. We've been saying the same thing for months and years now as we've been testing FSD. This concept of the brutal reality, though, means that either, like you guys were saying, the industry themselves will realize it, but also maybe he's referring to society and consumers will realize how advanced Tesla software is. And it's going to hit like a tsunami, because it's not just this one thing, though. It's going to be this massive thing. And that's where I think when he says that, it's going to be and not only is brutal, but it's going to be so hard. Like it's going to be a big thing. It could either mean breath, the things they can do, or it can mean just so good at that point that it cannot escape it.
Yeah, I think what people need to realize is you can produce a version of software. It's loaded into the car. It's 13.2.2. It's got some version number 2025 dot whatever. That's fine. That's the output. The input is many layers to get to where Tesla's. How are you able to buy that much compute? Well, you need an auto business that throws off a tremendous amount of cash. Well, how do you do that? Well, you work on the cost of manufacturing EVs, and you develop a manufacturing system that gets you to profitability, where you're able to throw off a couple $2 billion of free cash flow every quarter, so you can fund the infrastructure growth to build the data center out. And then every, call it 4 to 6 years, you massively transform your manufacturing system to take the next leg down. Why are you transforming your manufacturing system? Because now you want to step lower. And other people defeature their vehicles to get to lower price points. They defeature manufacturing methods. You kind of have a cheaper feel to the vehicle. And Tesla wants to get there via different manufacturing methods, but still a very high quality vehicle. And that's why the $40,000 to $50,000 Model 3 rivals $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 BMWs and Mercedes in terms of features and capability. But the point is that FSD software, or that robotaxi software, is the output, but it's the inputs, and it's building the data center. It's bringing up the first GPUs in 19 days. It's getting 100,000 GPUs to be coherent versus the peak of others is at 30,000. It's that they've created that cash conversion cycle, building the data center out, where people that supply data center chips like AMD and NVIDIA want to invest in his companies, because he pulls them from inventory, he puts them into production, and he drives the utilization rate so high, and he does it so quickly that he has to reorder again, and then he has to reorder again. And so there's so many things that layer into the output of V13.2, and it's not that someone's just going to be able to come out with and produce a chunk of code that is like V13.2. It's everything that goes into it, the manufacturing, the data, everything I just talked about, and I can keep going, that those things make the lead it makes the moat, quite difficult to catch up. And the whole foundation is speed and innovation. And that's why you can open source things, and you can put a lot of different things out there. And also the other thing that's kind of a moat for them is just their method of vertically integrating, and basically saying, like, I could buy these services, or I could buy these components, or I can make them myself and not have to pay the margin to people. If I don't, the margin is waste. The margin I have to pay to a partner does not help the consumer have a better experience. and it's a wasted line item in my unit economics. So why not get rid of it? And not every company can do that. Is the point? Because in order for you to be able to do that and go to a distributed model where you buy these services, in order to not be able to do that, you actually have to have the ability to do it better yourself. Like you have to be able to invent a better mousetrap and be able to produce it at higher efficiency than what you could buy it for. And that's what they did with the FSD computer as well. So the moat is to me, the gap is only widening, and it's not just the FSD software release. It's everything that goes into getting that release developed.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.